Hello, Peacekeepers. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Savannah Marshall with Marshall Mediation Group, and today we will be discussing how to resolve common workplace conflicts using the problem-solving and decision-making model. A little bit about me. My name is Savannah Marshall. I am the founder and CEO of Marshall Mediation Group, and I'm currently a legislative aide in the Florida State Senate. My educational background is in political science from Florida Atlantic University, and I'm currently studying conflict resolution and analysis at the University of Central Florida. Additionally, I'm Supreme Court trained in circuit civil court mediation and have worked with a number of student organizations across the state on conflict resolution. So some commonly experienced workplace conflicts that the problem-solving and decision-making model could apply to are situations such as long-term friendships that are having some rifts during the workday, but they still have to meet deadlines and continue working together. Another one could be relatives of the manager seemingly being treated better or worse than other employees that are not related to the manager. And finally, situations where an employee may request extra tasks outside of work hours from a non-related employee where somebody like their brother or their husband, who is usually working at the company, is not available that day. So there might be different boundaries to work with. So the problem-solving and decision-making model essentially breaks the conflict resolution process into two separate sections. The first section being the problem-solving section, and the second section, of course, being the decision-making section. Now, within these two sections, there are two separate steps, making a total of 4 steps to the conflict resolution system. And we will go into them in further detail in the next slide. But a little bit about this model is that it was created by the Weissmans, and I cannot tell you if they're related, but I am curious if they experienced any interpersonal workplace conflicts while creating this research. So let's get into it. Here are the 4 steps of the problem-solving decision-making model. The first step is to diagnose the conflict. The second step is to identify alternative solutions. The third step is to evaluate and choose a mutually acceptable solution. And the fourth step is to commit to the decision and implement it. So as you can see, the first 2 steps of this model include the problem-solving section of the model, and the second 2 steps are the decision-making. So diagnosing the conflict and identifying alternative solutions are the problem-solving section, and then choosing a mutually acceptable solution and then implementing it is the decision-making process. So this is how the problem-solving decision-making model would look in real life when applied to an interpersonal workplace conflict. So the first step is to diagnose the conflict. In this step, I really recommend focusing on identifying the specific issues that are at the core of each person's perspective to really find their pain points as well as their priorities. And sometimes there are completely unrelated underlying issues going on that can be revealed during this step. So open communication and fluid communication is definitely key to setting you up for success in the rest of the model. Now, the second step of the problem-solving portion of this model is to identify solutions. This step would be considered the brainstorming phase. And I really recommend during this step to focus on brainstorming as many possible solutions that you can think of, really put everything on the table, get creative as creative as possible, and try the no evaluation rule. And this is a rule that's used during brainstorming that essentially there will be no evaluation of anything that is put on the brainstorming table or on the whiteboard. Essentially, you're supposed to just put whatever comes to mind, no matter how silly or impractical it is, and do the evaluation later. So this can really open you up to some creative solutions that maybe you would not have considered if you kept it inside your brain. Now, the third step, we are entering the decision-making section of the model, and this step is to choose a mutually acceptable solution. Now, one way that you can find a mutually acceptable solution after a successful brainstorming phase is to have each party prioritize, in terms of their preference, what they prefer out of all of the solutions that were brought up during the brainstorming phase. So if you really give the brainstorming phase all of your best effort and all of your buy-in and commitment to the brainstorming phase, you can really find some creative solutions once you have prioritized your preferences of the brainstormed options. So if you have both parties do this, you might hopefully find some commonalities and once again find some underlying issues or possibly be surprised by somebody else's preference. Now, the final step of the problem-solving decision-making model is once again in the decision-making process, which is to commit and to implement. Now, this is arguably the hardest step of the model because it really requires you to be successful in the first three steps, which is encouraging would be to encourage collaboration, encourage open communication, and encourage creativity during the first three steps. So if you are able to encourage collaboration and communication in the first couple steps, you will be building trust to lead the way to a successful commitment of the solution that you do choose in step three. In addition, if you are having trouble with potential trust issues or potential buy-in or collaboration in the fourth step, it might take some external participation from other people in the organization to ensure that the conflict doesn't escalate any further. So hopefully this helps and you can kind of get an idea of what the model looks like when applied to a real conflict, in addition to some tips that you can use for each step. Finally, here is the works cited that I used for this presentation. I used the Handbook of Conflict Resolution Theory and Practice by Peter Coleman, and I definitely recommend this book if you haven't read it, but hopefully you learned something from this presentation today. So thank you for watching. Again, my name is Savannah Marshall, and hope to see you in another video. Happy peacekeeping.